The metallic clatter of spent brass hitting frozen ground broke the morning silence. Obergefreiter Klaus Hoffman lowered the captured American rifle, smoke still curling from its muzzle. 8 shots, 8 empty casings scattered at his feet. He reached for the next stripper clip to reload his Karabiner 98K, the rifle he'd carried through Poland, France, and 2 winters in Russia. His fingers, numb from the December cold, fumbled with the 5-round clip. Beside him, his squad leader, Feldwebel Ernst Becker, worked the bolt on an identical American rifle they'd taken from a dead GI 3 days earlier near Bastogne. December 19th, 1944. The German 7th Army testing facility, 15 kilometers behind the front lines in the Ardennes. 2 captured M1 Garand rifles sat on a makeshift firing table alongside the standard-issue German bolt actions. Within the hour, Wehrmacht ordnance officers would witness a demonstration that would fundamentally alter their understanding of American infantry capabilities. The mathematics were about to become unavoidable, the tactical implications devastating. American soldiers weren't just better supplied or better supported by artillery and air power. They were reloading their rifles 3 times faster than German infantry could manage with their Kar 98K bolt actions. This single advantage, multiplied across hundreds of thousands of riflemen, explained why German defensive positions that should have held were being overrun, why American attacks pressed forward with unrelenting fire, why Wehrmacht units reported being suppressed by what seemed like impossibly sustained rifle fire from numerically inferior forces. The answer lay in a spring-loaded clip that took 0.6 seconds to insert versus the 14 seconds required to thumb 5 rounds individually into a Mauser magazine. Every firefight, every defensive stand, every counterattack was being decided by this disparity. And German small arms, designers had no solution that could reach the field before the war's end. Hoffman had captured the first M1 Garand on December 16th, the opening day of the Ardennes offensive. His company from the 3rd Panzergrenadier Division had overrun American positions near Lanzerath, catching elements of the 99th Infantry Division in their assembly areas before dawn. In the chaos of close quarters, fighting through American foxholes and supply dumps, Hoffman found the rifle beside its dead owner, a private whose name tag read Sullivan. The weapon was unlike anything in German service. Heavy, certainly, nearly 10 pounds fully loaded, but it felt solid, purposeful. The gas cylinder above the barrel suggested semi-automatic operation, something Hoffman had seen only rarely in German hands with the Gewehr 43. He checked the chamber. Empty. The bolt was locked back. A peculiar 8-round clip protruded from the top of the action. He pressed down on the clip, and it ejected, with a distinctive metallic ping, falling into the snow. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the story, hit the subscribe button and let us know in the comments from where in the world you are watching from today. Hoffman searched the Americans' ammunition pouches and found a dozen more clips, each holding 8 rounds of 30-06 Springfield ammunition. The cartridge was similar to the German 7.92 by 57mm Mauser round. Both were powerful rifle cartridges, designed in the early 20th century for long-range accuracy and stopping power. He loaded one of the clips into the Garand, pressing it down into the internal magazine until the bolt slammed forward with mechanical authority, chambering the first round. The action was smooth, positive, completely different from the manual bolt manipulation his Kar 98K required. Hoffman carried both rifles back through German lines as his unit consolidated their gains. The M1 Garand represented something more than a war trophy. It was evidence of American industrial and engineering capabilities that German intelligence summaries had consistently understated. By December 18th, Hoffman's company had been pulled from the advance and sent to a rear area facility, where Wehrmacht ordnance specialists were examining captured American equipment. The facility, established in a requisitioned schoolhouse, had become a clearinghouse for technical intelligence as German forces overran American supply dumps and defensive positions. Dozens of American weapons filled the classrooms. M1 carbines, Thompson submachine guns, Browning automatic rifles, bazookas, but the ordnance officers showed particular interest in the M1 Garand. Lieutenant Werner Schultz, a small arms specialist from the Army Weapons Office, arrived from Berlin specifically to examine the captured rifles. Schultz had a degree in mechanical engineering from the Technical University of Berlin and had worked on German, semi-automatic rifle programs before the war. He understood immediately what the M1 Garand represented. Germany had attempted to field semi-automatic rifles multiple times. The Gewehr 41 had been a costly failure, unreliable and complex. The improved Gewehr 43 worked better, but suffered from manufacturing difficulties and material shortages. By December 1944, only about 50,000 Gewehr 43s had been produced. For comparison, American factories had manufactured over 4 million M1 Garands by this date. The disparity in production volume told its own story about relative industrial capabilities, but Schultz was more interested in the technical details that enabled such mass production. He field-stripped the M1 Garand on a classroom desk, laying out each component with practiced precision. The disassembly was straightforward, requiring no special tools. Pull the operating rod handle back, depress the follower, allow the bolt to go forward. Rotate the trigger housing group and remove it. Pull out the operating rod and bolt assembly. The entire process took 30 seconds. Schultz examined each part with growing respect for the design philosophy. The machining was workmanlike rather than precise by German standards, yet every component showed robust engineering with generous tolerances that would facilitate mass production. The gas system was elegantly simple. Gas tapped from the barrel drove a piston that cycled the action. The rotating bolt locked securely with multiple lugs. The trigger mechanism was straightforward and reliable. Nothing was overcomplicated. Nothing required hand-fitting. Every part could be manufactured by semi-skilled workers using automated machinery. This was automotive engineering applied to military weapons. The approach was distinctly American, reflecting decades of experience in mass-producing automobiles and farm equipment. German weapons designers, trained in traditional armourer craftsmanship, instinctively sought precision and tight tolerances. American designers built reliability through generous margins and interchangeable parts. Schultz reassembled the rifle and cycled the action repeatedly. Smooth, positive, no binding. He loaded an 8-round clip and worked the action, watching how the clip fed rounds into the chamber. The last round fired. The clip ejected automatically with that characteristic metallic ping. The bolt locked open, ready for the next clip. The entire system was designed for speed and simplicity. A trained soldier could reload the M1 Garand faster than any bolt-action rifle in service with any army. This was the critical advantage Schultz needed to quantify. On December 19th, he organized a formal test at a firing range behind the schoolhouse. The temperature hovered around -5 degrees Celsius, with occasional snow flurries driven by a bitter wind from the northeast. Not ideal conditions for comparative testing, but no one expected the war to pause for better weather. Schultz selected 3 German soldiers with extensive combat experience. Each had fired thousands of rounds through the Kar-98K and could operate their rifles with the smooth efficiency that came from years of training. He also requested Hoffman, who had captured the M1 Garand and had already familiarized himself with its operation. The test protocol was simple. Each soldier would fire a set number of rounds as quickly as possible, while maintaining accuracy against man-sized targets at 100 meters. Time would be measured from the first shot to the last. The test would be repeated multiple times to establish reliable averages. Accuracy would be recorded, but was secondary to the primary question: how quickly could each weapon system deliver aimed fire? The first German soldier, Gefreiter Hans Müller, stepped to the firing line with his Kar-98K. The rifle held 5 rounds in its internal magazine, loaded via stripper clips. Müller had 12 rounds ammunition and 2 stripper clips. On Schultz's command, Müller fired his first shot. He worked the bolt smoothly, ejecting the spent case and chambering the next round. Fire. Work the bolt. Fire. Work the bolt. His technique was practiced, economical. After 5 rounds, the bolt locked open on an empty magazine. Müller reached for his first stripper clip, aligned it with the guide rails machined into the receiver, and thumbed all 5 rounds down into the magazine with firm pressure. The clip fell away. He released the bolt, chambering a round. Fire. Work the bolt. The sequence repeated until he'd fired 12 rounds. Elapsed time, 42 seconds. Hits on target, 11 out of 12. 1 round had struck just outside the target silhouette, likely due to the cold affecting Müller's trigger control. But the accuracy was excellent, representative of well-trained German infantry marksmanship. Schultz made careful notes. 42 seconds for 12 rounds meant an average of 3.5 seconds per round. But that average concealed an important reality. The first 5 shots had taken 18 seconds, approximately 3.6 seconds each. Reloading with the stripper clip required an additional 7 seconds. The next 7 shots until the magazine was empty again took another 17 seconds, or 2.4 seconds each, when Müller didn't need to reload. This disparity between firing from a loaded magazine versus the time required to reload represented a critical vulnerability in combat. The second German soldier, Obergefreiter Friedrich Stein, achieved similar results. 44 seconds for 12 rounds, 10 hits on target. The slight difference in time reflected individual variation, but the pattern remained consistent. German infantry, armed with Kar-98K rifles, could maintain a steady rate of aimed fire until their 5-round magazines ran dry. Then they faced a 7 to 8 second reload cycle that left them vulnerable. Now it was Hoffman's turn with the captured M1 Garand. He had practiced with the rifle over the past 2 days, burning through several dozen rounds of captured American ammunition to familiarize himself with its characteristics. The M1 Garand held 8 rounds in its internal magazine, loaded via an N-block clip that stayed inside the rifle until the last round was fired. Hoffman had 8 of these clips, giving him 64 rounds available. For this test, he would fire just 12 rounds, matching what the Kar-98K shooters had done. Schultz gave the command. Hoffman pressed the trigger. The M1 Garand fired. The gas-operated action cycled automatically, ejecting the spent case and chambering the next round. All Hoffman had to do was reacquire his sight picture and press the trigger again. No bolt to manipulate, no interruption to his firing position. Fire, fire, fire. The rifle's semi-automatic action allowed him to maintain a smooth rhythm. 8 rounds downrange in rapid succession. The empty en-bloc clip ejected with its metallic ping. Hoffman's left hand moved instinctively to his ammunition pouch, extracted a fresh clip, guided it into the receiver, and pressed down. The bolt slammed forward. Fire, 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 fire. 12 rounds complete. Elapsed time, 16 seconds. Hits on target, 12 out of 12. The difference was so dramatic that Schultz asked Hoffman to repeat the test. Second iteration, 15 seconds, 12 hits. Third iteration, 17 seconds, 11 hits. The pattern was undeniable. Hoffman, with the M1 Garand, was firing the same number of rounds in roughly 1/3 the time the Kar-98K shooters required. More importantly, the reload took less than 1 second once Hoffman became practiced with the motion. The 8-round clip simply dropped into place, and the bolt went forward. No thumbing individual rounds. No fumbling with stripper clips in the cold. The tactical implications struck Schultz with the force of a physical blow. In any firefight, American infantry armed with M1 Garands could deliver sustained fire at rates German infantry could not match. The semi-automatic action eliminated the mechanical delay of working a bolt. The en-bloc clip system reduced reload time from 7 or 8 seconds down to under 1 second. Consider a 30-second engagement. The average German infantryman with a Kar-98K could fire perhaps 10 rounds in 30 seconds, including 1 reload cycle. That was generous, assuming perfect conditions and well-trained soldiers. An American with an M1 Garand could fire 20 rounds in the same 30 seconds, including 2 reload cycles. The American put twice as many rounds downrange in the same amount of time. Scale that advantage across a rifle squad of 8 to 12 men. German squads centered their tactics around the MG-34 or MG-42 machine gun, with riflemen providing supporting fire and security for the gunner. American rifle squads had every soldier contributing significant firepower independently. The Browning automatic rifle provided the squad automatic weapon, but each rifleman with an M1 Garand was nearly as effective as a German soldier with a semi-automatic Gewehr 43, a weapon German infantry rarely saw. Scholz understood that he was looking at a fundamental mismatch in small arms capability. American soldiers weren't just well supplied with ammunition and supported by superior artillery. They were armed with rifles that allowed them to reload 3 times faster and fire twice as rapidly as German infantry. Every tactical calculation based on comparable infantry effectiveness was wrong. An American rifle platoon could generate more small arms fire than a German platoon of equivalent size. The advantage was multiplicative. Better individual weapons, more ammunition, better logistics, all combined to produce overwhelming fire superiority at the squad and platoon level. The test continued through the morning. Additional German soldiers tried, both rifles. The pattern remained consistent. The M1 Garand allowed faster firing and dramatically faster reloading than the Kar-98K. Accuracy was comparable between well-trained shooters using either weapon. The difference lay purely in speed of fire and speed of reload. By noon, Scholz had compiled enough data to write his preliminary report. The document, dated December 19th, 1944, and classified as confidential, would make its way through Wehrmacht channels over the following weeks. The report's conclusions were stark. American infantry possessed a significant firepower advantage due to their semi-automatic rifles. German infantry, armed with bolt-action rifles, were at a tactical disadvantage in all small arms engagements at ranges under 300 meters, where most combat occurred. The recommendation section of Scholz's report acknowledged an uncomfortable reality. Germany had no capacity to field a comparable weapon in sufficient numbers to make a difference. The Gewehr 43 production was limited by manufacturing complexity and material shortages. Expanding production would require retooling factories and training workers, at a time when German industry was struggling to maintain production of existing weapons. The Sturmgewehr 44, recently authorized for mass production by Hitler, offered a potential solution but fired an intermediate cartridge and was intended primarily for assault troops rather than standard infantry. More fundamentally, there was no time. The war situation deteriorated daily. Allied forces were recovering from the initial shock of the Ardennes offensive and preparing counterattacks. German forces lacked fuel, ammunition, and reserves to sustain offensive operations. Small arms comparisons mattered less when German units were increasingly immobilized by lack of fuel and subjected to devastating Allied air attacks whenever the weather cleared. Still, Scholz's report documented a truth that German commanders needed to understand. American infantry was more capable than German assessments had credited. The M1 Garand wasn't just another rifle. It represented a different philosophy of infantry combat. Where German doctrine emphasized marksmanship and fire discipline with bolt-action rifles supplemented by machine guns, American doctrine gave every rifleman significant firepower. The comparison with German semi-automatic rifles made the American achievement more impressive. The Gewehr 43, when it worked correctly, offered semi-automatic fire comparable to the M1 Garand. But G43 production never exceeded a few thousand rifles per month. Quality control problems plagued the design. Many G43 seconds experienced extraction failures, gas system malfunctions, and magazine feeding problems. Frontline troops who received G43 seconds often preferred to keep their old Kar-98K rifles rather than trust the temperamental semi-automatic. American factories, by contrast, were producing 8 to 10,000 M1 Garands per day at peak production. Quality was consistent, The rifles worked reliably in conditions ranging from Pacific jungles to European winters to North African deserts. When American weapons required repair, replacement parts were abundant. German units operating captured American weapons universally praised their reliability. Wehrmacht reports from units using captured M1 Garands noted that the rifles functioned without problems even when maintenance was minimal. This was not the German experience with their own semi-automatic rifles, which demanded careful maintenance and frequently malfunctioned despite it. The fundamental difference lay in manufacturing philosophy and industrial capacity. American automotive companies that built the M1 Garand, including Springfield Armory and Winchester, applied mass production techniques developed over decades of civilian manufacturing. Tolerances were generous compared to German precision machining standards. Parts were designed for interchangeability without hand-fitting. The result was a weapon that could be manufactured quickly by semi-skilled workers and maintained easily by soldiers with basic training. German weapons reflected a different tradition: precision machining, tight tolerances, components hand-fitted by skilled armourers. This approach produced excellent weapons when done correctly, but it couldn't scale to the production volumes modern war required. German industry could never match American output because German manufacturing philosophy wasn't designed for true mass production. By late December 1944, the tactical situation in the Ardennes had turned decisively against German forces. The offensive that began with such promise on December 16th was stalling. American reinforcements flooded into the battle area. The weather cleared, allowing Allied aircraft to devastate German supply columns. Fuel shortages immobilized German armored units. Infantry forces found themselves engaged in desperate defensive fighting rather than exploitation operations. In this context, the M1 Garand's advantages became even more apparent to German soldiers facing American counterattacks. American infantry advanced behind curtains of rifle fire that seemed impossibly intense for the number of soldiers involved. German defensive positions found themselves suppressed by sustained fire that gave them no opportunity to return effective fire. The reload speed advantage meant American soldiers could maintain fire pressure continuously, while German defenders had to pause every 5 rounds to reload their Kar-98 case. German after-action reports from the Ardennes fighting frequently mentioned American firepower superiority. Company and battalion commanders reported that American attacks were preceded by intense small arms fire that pinned German defenders and allowed American infantry to close to grenade range. This wasn't artillery preparation or machine gun fire. It was rifle fire from American infantry armed with M1 Garands and advancing by fire and movement. German infantry doctrine emphasized aimed fire and fire discipline. Soldiers were trained to select targets carefully and make every shot count. This approach worked well with bolt-action rifles, where rate of fire was limited by mechanical operation. American doctrine emphasized fire superiority and aggressive movement. Soldiers were trained to keep enemy heads down with sustained fire, while friendly elements maneuvered. The M1 Garand made this possible at the rifle squad level without requiring extensive machine gun support. The comparison became even more painful for German forces when they examined American logistical support. Each American infantryman in the European theatre was supplied with approximately 100 rounds of rifle ammunition as a basic load. Another 100 to 200 rounds were available from company supplies. Resupply was reliable and frequent. American trucks brought ammunition forward regularly. German infantry in late 1944 carried 60 rounds as a basic load, 30 in pouches and 30 in stripper clips. Resupply was increasingly irregular. Ammunition conservation was a constant concern. A German soldier who fired all 60 rounds in combat might wait days for resupply. An American soldier who expended his basic load could expect resupply within hours, often sooner. This disparity in ammunition supply amplified the M1 Garand's technical advantages. American soldiers could use their rifles' rapid-fire capabilities without worrying about ammunition exhaustion. German soldiers had to carefully ration their limited ammunition, even when tactical situations demanded rapid fire. The combination of superior weapons and superior logistics created a multiplicative advantage that overwhelmed German forces even when they held tactically favorable positions. Consider a specific engagement that illustrated these principles. On January 3, 1945, elements of the American 87th Infantry Division attacked German positions near Tillet, Belgium. The German defenders from the 9th Volksgrenadier Division occupied prepared positions with good fields of fire. They had adequate ammunition and were determined to hold. The American attack began with a brief artillery preparation, followed immediately by infantry assault. American rifle companies advanced in bounds, one platoon providing covering fire while another moved forward. The volume of rifle fire from the stationary American platoon was sufficient to keep German defenders suppressed. German soldiers who attempted to return fire found themselves immediately targeted by multiple American riflemen who could deliver rapid follow-up shots. The advancing American platoon closed to within grenade range before German defenders could organize effective resistance. German company commanders reported that they couldn't maintain sustained return fire against the attacking Americans. Every time German soldiers rose to fire their Kar-98Ks, they were met with immediate suppressive fire from American M1 Garands. The bolt-action rifles required German soldiers to expose themselves repeatedly to work the bolt between shots. American soldiers with semi-automatic rifles could fire multiple rounds without changing position or breaking their sight picture. If you find this story engaging, please take a moment to subscribe and enable notifications. It helps us continue producing in-depth content like this. The tactical dynamics were brutally simple. German defenders needed 5 to 7 seconds to aim, fire, work the bolt, and fire again. American attackers needed 2 to 3 seconds to fire twice. In any direct firefight, the Americans could put 2 rounds downrange for every 1 German round. This 2-to-1 advantage in rate of fire was decisive when combined with American artillery support, air superiority, and numerical advantages. German defensive positions that should have held for hours were overrun in minutes. The engagement at Tillet was not unique. Similar patterns appeared in after-action reports throughout the Ardennes campaign and in subsequent fighting as American forces pushed toward the Rhine. American infantry tactics emphasized aggressive fire and movement. German infantry, still trained in doctrines developed when both sides used bolt-action rifles, found their tactical responses inadequate against an enemy that could sustain twice their rate of fire. Wehrmacht intelligence summaries from January 1945 acknowledged these realities with increasing bluntness. American infantry effectiveness exceeded German projections. American small arms, particularly the M1 Garand rifle, provided significant advantages in infantry combat. German forces could not match American firepower at the squad and platoon level. These admissions represented a profound shift in German assessment of Polisection, American military capabilities. Early in the war, German commanders had viewed American soldiers as inadequately trained and poorly led. The fighting in North Africa and Italy had begun to change these assessments. The campaign in Northwest Europe after D-Day had completed the transformation. By early 1945, German intelligence reports described American infantry as well-trained, well-equipped, and highly effective, particularly in offensive operations supported by artillery and air power. The M1 Garand featured prominently in these revised assessments. German intelligence documents from this period include detailed descriptions of the rifle's characteristics, capabilities, and tactical employment. Some reports included interrogations of captured American soldiers who described their training with the M1 Garand and their confidence in its reliability and firepower. One particularly revealing intelligence summary from February 1945 compiled observations from multiple German divisions that had faced American infantry. The document noted that American rifle squads could deliver sustained fire equivalent to German squads with twice as many men. The report attributed this directly to the M1 Garand's semi-automatic action and rapid reload capability. The summary concluded that German infantry armed with bolt-action rifles were at a severe disadvantage in all small arms engagements with American forces. German attempts to counter the M1 Garand's advantages focused on tactical adjustments rather than equipment changes. Infantry units were instructed to emphasize defensive positions with multiple firing lanes and interlocking fields of fire. Machine gun positions were to be carefully sighted to provide mutually supporting fire. Snipers armed with scoped Kar 98K rifles were to target American officers and automatic weapons gunners. These tactical adjustments helped, but they couldn't overcome the fundamental firepower disparity. American infantry could suppress German defensive positions with rifle fire while maneuvering to flank them. German defenders found themselves pinned by American fire volume and unable to shift positions without exposing themselves to devastating aimed fire from multiple M1 Garands. The reload speed advantage proved particularly crucial in urban combat, which characterized much of the fighting from December 1944 through March 1945. In close quarters, fighting through buildings and streets, engagements occurred at ranges of 10 to 50 meters. At these distances, the ability to fire rapidly and reload quickly was decisive. American infantry could clear buildings room by room, maintaining continuous fire that gave German defenders no opportunity to respond effectively. German soldiers armed with Kar 98K rifles found themselves outmatched in these conditions. The 5-round magazine capacity and slow reload cycle left them vulnerable after firing their initial rounds. American soldiers with 8-round M1 Garands and 1-second reload times could maintain fire pressure that was overwhelming. Wehrmacht training documents from early 1945 acknowledged these realities and attempted to prepare soldiers for the tactical situations they would face. Training emphasized the importance of first-round hits, careful ammunition conservation, and coordinated fire from multiple soldiers to compensate for individual firepower limitations. But training could only do so much. The hardware disadvantage was real and could not be overcome through doctrine or tactics. By March 1945, as American forces crossed the Rhine and drove into Germany, the tactical situation had deteriorated to the point where small arms comparisons were almost academic. German units lacked fuel, ammunition, and often food. Training levels had declined as casualties mounted, and replacement soldiers arrived with minimal preparation. Many defenders were Volksgrenadier divisions filled with overage men, boys, and conscripts from occupied territories. Equipment shortages meant not every soldier even had a rifle. In this context, the M1 Garand represented just one of many American advantages, but it remained a significant one. Even poorly trained American infantrymen with basic weapons familiarization could employ the M1 Garand effectively. The rifle's semi-automatic action and simple operation meant that soldiers didn't need months of bolt manipulation practice to achieve reasonable proficiency. German infantry, armed with Kar 98K rifles, needed extensive training to maximize the weapon's rate of fire through smooth bolt operation. American infantry needed only basic marksmanship training to use the M1 Garand effectively. The rifle's mechanical operation handled the cycling that German soldiers had to perform manually. This difference in training requirements mattered enormously, as both armies struggled to replace casualties in 1945. American replacement training centers could produce competent riflemen in 12 to 16 weeks. German training time had been progressively shortened as manpower demands increased, with some replacement soldiers receiving only 4 to 6 weeks of basic training before being sent to combat units. The M1 Garand partially compensated for limited training time by making individual soldiers more effective with less practice. German bolt-action rifles required more training time to achieve equivalent effectiveness, time the Wehrmacht no longer had available. The final months of the war in Europe saw the M1 Garand deployed in overwhelming numbers against increasingly desperate German defensive efforts. American infantry divisions advancing through Germany encountered scattered resistance from units that ranged from elite Waffen-SS divisions to improvised battle groups of garrison troops, police, and Hitler Youth. Regardless of who defended, the outcome was increasingly predetermined. American firepower superiority at all levels, from individual rifles through artillery to complete air dominance, made sustained German resistance impossible. The M1 Garand contributed to this firepower superiority, but was only one component of a comprehensive system that integrated weapons, logistics, tactics, and industrial capacity into an overwhelming whole. German soldiers who survived the war and were later interviewed about their combat experiences frequently mentioned American firepower as a decisive factor. Many specifically recalled the intensity of American rifle fire and the difficulty of returning effective fire against soldiers armed with semi-automatic weapons. Some veterans described the distinctive sound of M1 Garands in action, a rapid cadence of shots that contrasted sharply with the slower, more deliberate fire of bolt-action rifles. Others remembered the metallic ping of empty M1 clips ejecting, a sound that became so associated with American infantry that it appears in countless post-war accounts. There was debate, then and later, about whether this ping created a tactical disadvantage by signaling to enemy soldiers that an American rifle was empty. German veterans gave conflicting accounts. Some claimed they listened for the ping and attacked when they heard it. Others said the sound was rarely audible in the chaos and noise of actual combat. Analysis suggests the ping was a minor factor at most. The M1 Garand's advantages, rapid fire and rapid reload, far outweighed any theoretical disadvantage from an audible empty clip ejection. American infantry armed with M1 Garands won firefights consistently throughout the war. If the ping had been a significant tactical liability, this pattern would not have held. The story of German forces testing captured M1 Garands and discovering the reload speed advantage represents a microcosm of the broader industrial and technological competition that shaped World War II. Germany entered the war with many technical advantages, excellent weapons, well-trained soldiers, proven tactics. But Germany lacked the industrial depth to maintain those advantages against enemies with superior resources and greater manufacturing capacity. The United States entered the war with less combat experience and weapons that were sometimes less sophisticated than German equivalents. But American industry could produce weapons in quantities that overwhelmed German forces. More importantly, American weapons were designed for mass production and ease of use, allowing semi-skilled workers to manufacture them and minimally trained soldiers to employ them effectively. The M1 Garand exemplified this American approach. It wasn't the most sophisticated semi-automatic rifle of World War II. Soviet, German, and other nations fielded semi-automatic rifles with various technical features. But the M1 Garand was reliable, manufacturable, and available in overwhelming numbers. Over 4 million were produced during the war. American infantry was uniformly equipped with them by mid-1944. No other nation achieved this level of standardization with semi-automatic rifles. The consistency of equipment, every American infantryman carrying the same rifle using the same ammunition and the same training, created a force multiplication effect that German units with mixed equipment could never match. German infantry in late 1944 and 1945 carried a mix of Kar 98K rifles, Gewehr 43 semi-automatics, captured Soviet weapons, and various submachine guns depending on availability. This lack of standardization, complicated logistics, training, and tactical employment. American infantry units enjoyed the simplicity of uniform equipment. Every rifleman needed the same ammunition, 8-round clips in 30-06. Every rifleman had been trained on the same weapon system. Every rifleman could expect the same level of performance from his rifle. This operational simplicity, often overlooked in favor of more dramatic factors like air power or armored warfare, contributed substantially to American tactical effectiveness. The testing of captured M1 Garands by German ordnance officers in December 1944 produced data that confirmed what frontline German soldiers already knew from bitter experience. American infantry could reload 3 times faster and fire twice as rapidly as German infantry, armed with bolt-action rifles. This wasn't a minor advantage. It was a decisive superiority that shaped the outcome of small unit actions across every theater where American and German forces met. German engineers and tacticians understood the problem clearly. Their reports documented the M1 Garand's capabilities accurately and recommended tactical adjustments to mitigate the disadvantage. But understanding a problem and solving it are entirely different challenges. Germany, in late 1944, lacked the industrial capacity, raw materials, and time to field a competing weapon system. The war was already lost, though fighting would continue for another 5 months. Small arms comparisons mattered less than strategic realities. Allied numerical superiority, industrial dominance, and control of the air had made German defeat inevitable. The M1 Garand contributed to this outcome, but was only one factor among many. Still, for the German soldiers who faced American infantry in the closing months of the war, the firepower disparity was immediate and personal. They watched American soldiers reload in under a second while they struggled with 7-second reload cycles. They experienced sustained American rifle fire that seemed impossible to return effectively. They lost firefights they should have won, based on position and numbers, because American weapons allowed inferior positions and fewer soldiers to generate superior fire. The mathematics of infantry combat had changed. 3 German soldiers with Tenter bolt-action rifles could no longer match 2 American soldiers with semi-automatic rifles in any firefight that lasted more than a few seconds. The reload speed advantage, 3 times faster for the M1 Garand, meant American soldiers spent less time vulnerable and more time capable of delivering fire. Over the course of a 30-second engagement, this translated to twice as many rounds delivered on target. Scale that advantage across a rifle company of 200 men. The Americans could deliver the effective fire of 400 German infantrymen while fielding half as many soldiers. This was not sustainable for German forces, and they knew it from the moment their ordnance officers completed testing captured M1 Garands in December 1944. The radio report that forms this story's title, "Americans Reload 3 Times Faster Than Us," captured the essence of Germany's small arms dilemma. Not that American rifles were slightly better, not that American soldiers were marginally more effective, but that American infantry possessed a fundamental, multiplicative advantage in the most basic infantry weapon, the rifle. Every firefight, every attack, every defense was shaped by this disparity. German tactical doctrine, training, and equipment were all predicated on rough parity in individual weapons. When that parity disappeared, when American soldiers could reload 3 times faster and fire twice as rapidly, the entire German tactical system became obsolete. Adjustments were possible, but insufficient. The hardware gap was too large to overcome through training or tactics. Thank you for watching. For more detailed historical breakdowns, check out the other videos on your screen now, and don't forget to subscribe.